I was at an Overdose Awareness Day event last week in the western suburbs, and as we always try and do, we tried to bring the statistics back to the fact that they're not numbers, they're people that we're talking about. They're people that at least at some point were loved in there, by someone else, and that will be missed by other people. And while I was trying to say this, I was looking down in the front row of the group. There was a family, a mum, a dad. There was too many kids to be all their kids, unless they're Catholic, of course. There was lots of kids, and they were all crying. Every one of them was bawling, bawling their eyes out, crying. And I had to stop talking for a second, because even my words to me seemed a bit nonsense, looking at the way they were reacting in this thing. I talked to the mum afterwards, and her son, who had died a year before on that day, was the third one of his friends in that year to die of his small group of friends. And the thing that stuck in my head was that you shouldn't outlive your children. You shouldn't outlive your kids, really. It's very, very sad. In Victoria in 2015, we had something like 257 road toll deaths on the roads. In the same year, we had 420 overdose deaths, 330 of them being pharmaceutical medicines. I mean, that's a scary enough number, but then we got to think of all the families, the friends, the cousins, the loved ones, the community, the people they know that are being affected by overdose, and it's getting worse. More people are dying, and they're getting older. The Pennington Institute released a thing the other day. I'm sure Richard will answer questions about that after, if you have any. Sorry, Richard. And that report is called the Annual Overdose Report. And it showed that in 2014, 8 out of 10 overdose deaths were people aged 30 to 59. Of them, the people most likely to die of an overdose were 40 to 49. I'm 45. Hands up in here who's between 30 and 59. Pretty much everyone. So it's people like us, basically. It's people like us with lives like us. And it was interesting when Nick Linzeris earlier on talked about the doctors. Their patients wouldn't like the naloxone. That was you, wasn't it? I recently had an operation, and I was on quite a lot of strong painkillers for a couple of weeks. And anyone who saw me on that couple of weeks, I'd really like to know what I was doing. If anyone has any idea, because I have no idea what I was doing for that 2 or 3 weeks. When I went back for the repeat prescription and they were going to give me more of these painkillers, I said, look, I can't cope with these things. Can you at least give me some naloxone? And he just went, there's no need for that. You won't need them. And I was sitting there going, well, there kind of is. But I was so kind of dopey at the time, I just kind of took it for the answer and walked out the door. Luckily, nothing happened. Now, we hear that overdose is preventable, and you often hear overdose is preventable if you know the risks. But you know what? It's not enough. It's not enough to know the risks. Lots of people know the risks and they still overdose. There has to be a plan. There has to be a plan to prevent things from going wrong, and there has to be a plan for when things do go wrong. And that plan has to be able to save lives. So with some funding from the Department of Health and Human Services, it's changed a lot. We set up, with a lot of support from a lot of people in this room even, the Community Overdose Prevention and Education Programme, the COPE programme, so that workers who have contact with clients that are at risk of overdose, particularly opioid overdose, can show them how to prevent, recognise and respond to an overdose, including using naloxone, so they can tell loved ones, they can tell the people they use with, they can tell the loved ones that they use with. We're trying to do training for people who come into contact with, even if they're not using themselves, that come into contact with people who use opioids. I mean, as a society, we train people to use EpiPens for allergies because it's the fair and it's the decent thing to do. We treat parents how to use asthma inhalers, as Jane, you talk about allergies. Parents to use asthma inhalers on their kids if they're having an attack, because it's the fair and it's the decent. Thing to do. Now, Belinda McNair has been mentioned a couple of times in here, and a lot of the people here will remember, and like me, will miss Belinda very, very much. And they'll remember the work she put into setting up this program. Even when she was getting sicker and sicker, she was working harder and harder to do this work, because Belinda, like all of us, know that we can't get rid of all overdose risks, but we can do the fair and the decent thing. And the fair and the decent thing is to make sure that the community has access to naloxone and it's in the hands of as many people as needed. That's not an easy thing to do, to be quite honest. It's a quite difficult thing to do. Take it from me, we've been trying for quite a long time. It's not easy to set up these programs. It's not easy to get many doctors that will prescribe this stuff. We've got people, as Jane mentioned, running up and down roads to fill scripts while training is going on. It's not an unusual thing, believe me. Mr. Naloxone up there, practically Craig Harvey, must be doing a lot of running these days to get naloxone into the hands of people. So we do this and we help people set up the program. Now, initially the training was quite long. We had to cover quite a lot of things. It was a bit bulky, but like all things, it evolved. The training got shorter and shorter. It became a briefer and briefer intervention until now all you need is one of them in 10 to 15 minutes. That's it, basically. A little kit, 10 to 15 minutes. For a while it was quite easy because UCB was giving me hundreds of dummy naloxone mini jets, so I could do training in a room and give people lots of naloxone mini jets so they could play with them. It's not so easy to get dummy ampules, so I've got vitamin C ones that I bought on eBay. They're not exactly the same as naloxone. They don't look exactly the same, but they're an ampule. Do you know what I mean? Unfortunately, they're $50 for 50 of them, and we trained 400 people last year, so we don't have that kind of cash. You might notice my lovely sandwich bag ensemble here as well. This also is very, very cheap to produce. When we set it up, we expected a lot of things in the community. You hear the same kind of rumours over and over again. People don't understand drug use sometimes. They come up with some silly ideas. A couple of years ago, I went to buy my daughter a goldfish tank, and the pump, the goldfish pump. Does everyone know what I'm talking about? You can all understand my accent, yeah? So just checking. I went to buy my daughter a goldfish tank, and the goldfish pump was missing. And when I said to the woman in Kmart, "Oh, the goldfish tank pump is missing," she said, "Yeah, people robbed them and swapped them for drugs." I said, "What? Really?" I said, "It's not people whose goldfish tank pump has broken, No, it's apparently a well-known fact that drug dealers collect goldfish tank pumps." So look, we expected a lot of funny kind of things, especially the line which I've heard over and over again, the safety net line. This idea that naloxone will somehow enable people to get riskier and riskier and riskier. I spoke to a doctor who sat through one of the sessions where we were trying to raise awareness and get doctors to prescribe it, and he agreed at the end. He said, "Oh yeah, I know naloxone can save lives, but I won't prescribe it because if we give it to them, they won't worry about overdosing." And do you know how hard it is not to sit there and go, "My God, man, you're a doctor, the evidence." But we can't shake people. It's not good to shake people, no matter what you think is going through their minds at the time. So we showed him evidence. We showed him evaluations from naloxone programs in the US that showed that rather than promote risky overdose or risky opioid use, they demonstrated consistent or reduced risky drug use. For service providers, they provided naloxone programs, offered another way of engaging with people, and for many, the experience of overdose reversal led them into seeking drug treatment. So these are evidence that we've got to show people. Now, I was glad that Jane brought up that stuff from the US. I had actually earlier figures of far more impressive, the ones that you came up with. Now, there are other naloxone programs in Australia. We just heard from Jane, Harm Reduction Victoria, doing fantastic, sterling work. It's absolutely, it's brilliant, the stuff that they do. COPE isn't a competitor to that stuff. It's supposed to work together. It's supposed to tackle things from a different angle, but our goal is exactly the same in the end. It's to get widespread access to naloxone, to use naloxone as a standard overdose prevention tool and as a first aid response to overdose. But we do it a little bit differently. Like I said, it's training and support for primary healthcare workers and community organisation workers. So far, in the last couple of years, we've trained about 400 of them, roughly, across the state. And considering that some places put one worker forward, some places put two workers forward, do you know what I mean? It's quite an achievement, you know. Go to Mildura to train two people, you know. Agencies across the state, from Mildura to Lake Tyers, Shepperton, Geelong, Wodonga, Wangaratta, Seymour, Ballarat, Bendigo, Echuca, and of course many agencies in Melbourne. Initially it was early adopter sites when the programme was still quite raw and early on. You know, we were trying things out really. Now it's agencies like needle and syringe programmes, alcohol and drug treatment services, primary healthcare providers. Our goal eventually is to have everyone and anyone, even the housing workers, you name it, anyone that has anything to do with drug users, and it's particularly opioid users, will do this thing. Because opioid users, like all of it's not just the NSPs they go to, it's not just the drug and alcohol teams they go to. You know, they go to the doctor, they go to the emergency department, they do lots and lots of other things. And they in turn, these 400 people have in turn trained lots and lots of people to use naloxone. Lots of running around, getting prescriptions filled. But last year, I think we worked out there was, I can't remember, don't quote me on the exact figure, there was 600 or something people trained, and of them, the majority of them either got naloxone or at least got a script, but I don't have the exact number. It's hard to get numbers. One of the big problems that we've had with the COPE programme is in this sector people change a lot. They move around, and you get someone who goes into a job, they take on the role of doing the COPE person, the naloxone person, they invest all this time getting everything set up, and then they bugger off. Then they move on to another job. Then they move on to another job, and it's, by the time you've got around to talking to the agency again, can you give me your statistics? Can you give me how much data? Can you give me, that was Jimmy, he left, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. So who's doing naloxone now? Not quite sure. So then we have more things, problems like mini jets disappearing and ampules turning up. And I don't know if any of you have tried to open an ampule. If you get the chance, try and open it yourself and do all this stuff, even if there isn't someone going blue in front of you. Let's be honest about it. I'm not trying to be amusing here. Even if there isn't someone, whose life is depending on it there, it's quite a tricky thing to do. It's quite a difficult thing to do. Where was I? So, of these agencies, what we also discovered very, very quickly is that there's no one glove fits all hands, no hat fits, no one size fits all. Everywhere does things differently, and you have to be able to do that. Because everyone seems to be, every agency works a bit differently. What does seem to work is when you embed it in the service. It's not just someone's they like doing things around naloxone. Do you know what I mean? It has to be part of. Is there an intake process? Do you know what I mean? Can it be part of the intake process? Is there regular reviews? Do you have key work sessions? Is this something that you do with them and becomes part of it? But most of all, you need a local champion. You need someone who will actually do it. These agencies, like I say, they're all over the state. They're all over the place. We can't get everywhere. Harm reduction can't get everywhere. They try, I'm sure, but they can't get everywhere. None of us can. So we really need those local champions. We can help you with quite a lot of stuff. We can help you embed the service. We can help you with lots of information. We can help you with doctors. Hey, I'll even go and talk to the doctors, for you, if you want. Most of all, we can help you with evidence. And as I said, evidence is a real issue. A couple of weeks ago, I went to another event where it was a drug, alcohol style thing. And one of the speakers, who has actually a private consultancy around, I won't tell you his name, has a private consultancy around drug and alcohol use, stood up and he was pulling statistics out of his head, out of his ear. I nearly came up with a different one there. He was pulling statistics out of wherever. The one that really stuck in my head was when he said 60% of people who use ice are addicted for life from the first time they use it. And you're sitting there going, Jesus, did we not spend 3 years, 4 years going around the state telling everyone that it's just not true, you know? So I know I'm kind of preaching to the converted here when I tell you that numbers are important. So I'm going to give you a couple of numbers. I'm going to give you numbers that are indisputable fact. All right? You cannot argue with these. And this is one. One overdose death is too many. Yeah? One child that's lost a parent is too many, and one parent that's lost a child is one too many. And if we can do something about it, we should do something about it. Thank you very much.